With the upcoming launch of the Switch 2, we're looking at the start of a new Nintendo generation that could be just as exciting as the original Switch, if not more. But is it going to be the obvious choice that the original was for JRPG fans? Or is the Steam Deck still a contender? Hi, I'm Brandon, and I've spent much of my gaming time during the Switch's lifespan on JRPGs. In fact, the thing that sealed the deal for me, that made me absolutely certain I was going to get a Switch, was the teaser announcement for Shin Megami Tensei 5. But I haven't just played JRPGs on Switch. The Steam Deck has quickly become one of my favorite ways to play JRPGs. The Switch 2's official reveal made a major splash with its impressive hardware, and it raises the question, is the Switch 2 or the Steam Deck the better hybrid system for JRPG fans looking to buy a new system right now? If that's you, I think I can help. We're going to break this whole thing down so that when we finish, you can make an informed, intentional decision that meets your needs. Let's do this. We all have our biases, so let's be clear about what kind of person I am and what I value when it comes to making hardware purchase decisions. I grew up playing on all sorts of systems, and I have zero qualms about switching between them. I'll take my JRPGs anywhere I can get them. I was lucky enough to get a Switch within the first year or so of its release, and the hybrid nature of it was paradigm shifting for me in the best way. I picked up a Steam Deck almost exactly 2 years ago now, and when I did, it gave me options if I wanted to take my JRPGs on the go. It was no longer as simple as, if portability matters, go Switch. In the end, I'm just looking for a good enough way to play as many great JRPGs as possible. If you have specific concerns I don't cover here, make sure to factor them into your decision. As a final disclaimer, I have not played the Switch 2 yet, and I am basing a lot of this on what's been announced and what we've seen from the original Switch as an indicator of what we can reasonably expect. Alright, first things first, we need to know what hardware options we have. The Switch 2 only has one model. No choices to make there. Nice and easy. It has an LCD screen with a refresh rate of 120Hz and 256GB of storage. The Steam Deck is more complicated. You'll notice quickly that this is a consistent theme here. There are 3 different models, starting with a single option with an LCD screen with a refresh rate of 60Hz, and moving up to 2 more premium options with an OLED screen with a refresh rate of 90Hz. If you're open to refurbished hardware, that's yet another option that can push the price down. But as with all used hardware, there's always a chance you get unlucky and get one that's not quite as pristine as you'd like, so I won't be focusing on these. With so many Steam Deck options, it can be hard to decide which to go for. But most people would probably be just fine with the cheapest of the bunch, the one that comes with an LCD screen and 256GB of storage. This is the one I have, and it's going to be the basis for everything I have to say. Should you go for an OLED model of the Steam Deck, you're basically getting a refined version at a higher price. Nice, but by no means necessary. The Switch 2 looks like it's following very closely in the footsteps of the original Switch, with a simple UI and familiar controls. Pop in a game card and play. Or pop in a game key card, download the game, and play. Or download a game from the Nintendo eShop and play. It's mostly pretty straightforward. The Steam Deck, being a PC, is a little more complex, but you can keep it relatively simple if you want to. You don't have to dive deep to have a great time with it. You can stick to buying games directly from Steam and never leave game mode and its straightforward UI. You don't have to use desktop mode. Think of it as a bonus. If you want to dive in, you can customize the appearance and sounds, install non-Steam game launchers, and just about any PC software it's capable of running. If you're really strapped for cash, you could technically use it as your only PC, although I'm not sure I would want to go quite that far myself. But with increased freedom comes complexity. And that complexity means you might have to do some tinkering to get a game to work properly. I have very rarely needed to tinker much to get a game to work, but I am also very aware of the possibility. and I research each game for potential issues before spending my money. The Steam Deck verification badges are extremely helpful, albeit imperfect. I have never personally had a verified game simply not work, and what's more, I have occasionally seen games marked as unsupported work absolutely fine. While this is great, it's nowhere near as clear as it is on more traditional dedicated gaming hardware. So the Switch 2 has a distinct advantage here. The Switch 2 wins for ease of use. The Steam Deck wins for customizability. Where they both win is the sleep and wake functionality. Tap the power button, it goes to sleep. Tap it again, you're back in your game in seconds. I don't know if I'll ever get over how nice this is. All the fancy specs in the world mean nothing if the game library is barren. The hardware is the key that opens the door to all the incredible gaming experiences we seek. It is not the experience itself. To that end, I don't buy new game hardware based on promises of what's coming. Game release plans change constantly and outright cancellations are hardly rare. I'll believe it's coming when I see it released. Until then, it's fun to think about. It's currently May 2025, and the Switch 2 is not out yet. In fact, it has maybe one JRPG announced that is exclusive to it. Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster. And yeah, it's a remastered 3DS game. Granted, I really enjoyed it on 3DS, so I'm happy to see it come back. But my point is, the Switch 2 is full of potential. Unrealized potential. If you're looking to purchase a new system primarily to play JRPGs on it, the Switch 2's library remains a giant question mark. We don't know yet if it'll be filled to the brim with our beloved JRPGs like the original Switch is. What we do know is that it sounds like most original Switch games will be compatible with the Switch 2. And among the games with reported issues, I see very few JRPGs. Even then, I imagine we'll see these lists shrink over time as people figure out how to get their games running properly. If you have somehow managed to go without a Switch this whole time, then the Switch 2 could make a lot of sense just to get access to that catalog. It doesn't have everything, but sometimes it feels pretty close. Most JRPG remasters have come to the Switch, as well as almost every new JRPG that the Switch hardware is capable of running. That is admittedly stiff competition for the Steam Deck, but we can't count it out just yet. Many of those same remasters and new releases are also available on PC, which means the Steam Deck also has an incredible library of JRPGs just waiting to be explored, with the exception of those with compatibility issues. I have personally had issues with Chrono Cross on Steam Deck, but some of the reviews on Steam make it seem like the PC version in general has issues. I was able to get through the vast majority of the game just fine after doing a little tinkering, but it was not easy to figure out what I needed to do. I have also held off on buying games on Steam Deck, like Grandia 1 and 2, because they're listed as unsupported. Sometimes the Steam Deck verification rating is not perfect, but even digging around online, it seems like they either flat out don't work properly, or they require a lot of effort to get working flawlessly. But there are still points in favor of the Steam Deck, like Metaphor ReFantazio. It is playable, and there's even a demo available so you can see if you're satisfied with the performance before spending money on it. And if you're interested in catching up on some older JRPGs you missed out on that have not seen re-releases on modern hardware, check Steam. It might be there just waiting for you to find it. That's how I managed to beat my first couple Ys games. Neither option is better than the other here. They both have incredible game libraries, so the real question is which games you want to play on them. Pro tip, make an actual list for each and compare them. There are way too many good JRPGs on each to remember all of them without writing them down. From what we've seen of the Switch 2 so far, it looks like it will be able to comfortably compete with the more powerful handheld PCs on the market right now. The same ones that are already competing with the Steam Deck. I think we're about to enter a period where the Steam Deck just cannot keep up with the latest system from Nintendo when it comes to pure power. The screen resolution is probably the first major difference you'll notice. The Steam Deck has an 800p screen, while the Switch 2 has a 1080p screen. For more modern 3D games, that can make a big difference. Things get even more interesting when you start playing on an external display like a TV. The Switch 2 will be capable of 4K output, although I wouldn't be surprised to see it limited to a lower frame rate in many cases. With the Steam Deck, because it's really just a PC, you can go pretty wild with whatever resolution your TV supports, including 4K. Whether or not that's going to give you a good gameplay experience is another matter. For less demanding games like remasters of older titles, 4K from the Steam Deck is absolutely possible, and I've played games like Trails from Zero at this resolution with great success. 60 frames per second, no noticeable dips, just smooth the whole way through. This is one of the biggest reasons I think the Steam Deck is still worth considering for JRPG fans. Many of the games we play don't rely on the latest and greatest in graphics, which means a less powerful system isn't that big of a barrier. With that said, playing the demo of Metaphor ReFantasio, I really wished the Steam Deck were more powerful. It was playable, but I felt like I was missing out on a more authentic experience, since the frame rate wasn't particularly impressive and everything looked a little crushed. This is where I see the Switch 2 positioning itself ahead of the Steam Deck if it gets games like Metaphor. For performance, the Switch 2 looks like it has a pretty clear advantage. It's time to talk prices, and for simplicity's sake, I'll be sticking with USD. The Switch 2 is $450. The Steam Deck starts at $400. That's not a massive difference, just $50. The Switch 2 comes with a dock and detachable controllers that snap into the included grip to create a more traditional controller experience. The Steam Deck does not, so if you want to play on a TV, you'll have to get a dock or USB hub with video out and a controller. Most of us aren't getting into gaming for the first time with a Steam Deck, so the good news there is that you probably already have a controller that will work on it. The bad news is that you might need to buy a dock or USB hub. At the very least, you have plenty of options. You can get the dock Valve makes, but that's another $80. There are plenty of third-party options for less. To get the same kind of hybrid experience as a Switch 2, you should expect to spend about as much as you would for a Switch 2. Let's imagine that you've spent the $450 or so to get either a Switch 2 or a Steam Deck and a dock. Now it's time to get some games. If you primarily purchase games digitally, I would say the Steam Deck is the safe bet for cheaper prices. If we look at historical lows, the lowest price a game has ever had, Steam prices are often the same as what you can find on consoles. However, the big advantages of the Steam Deck here are the many third-party sites that often have lower prices, even if only by a few dollars, and the fact that sales on Steam and third-party sites are pretty frequent and cover a lot of games at once. If you buy a lot of games and you're saving a few bucks every time compared to the sale price on consoles, that adds up over time. It also allows you to stock up on games when they're cheap to keep you busy until another sale rolls around. If you're perfectly happy buying physical versions, the Switch 2 may or may not make more sense. Generally, physical game prices fluctuate a lot as stores run their own sales, and sometimes that means prices drop even lower than digital versions. But here's the kicker. The Switch 2 games announced so far? Many seem to be going the game key card route. So you get a physical card, it allows the Switch 2 it's inserted into to download the game, and you need that physical card inserted anytime you want to play the downloaded game. Pretty sure I got that right. For physical collectors, since the game data isn't actually on the card, this could be reason enough to just buy digital versions. Only time will tell how many companies opt for the game key card format, but right now it's looking like it will be fairly common. If you're only interested in getting the best price possible, whether that's digital versions, physical versions, or the pseudo-physical version that is the game key card, Switch 2 could be looking pretty good right about now. If you're already fully on board with the digital future, the Steam Deck is a great choice, particularly if you care about maintaining access to your purchases for years to come, regardless of what hardware you're using. While you can use much more than just the Steam store on it, the Steam store itself isn't tied down to the Steam Deck, so when you buy new hardware in the future, you won't have to buy your favorite games again just to keep playing them. If you plan on playing handheld or getting some gaming time in on the go, then size and comfort in the hand cannot be ignored. They're both big boys. There's no other way to say it. The original Switch was already beyond pocket size for most pants, and the Switch 2 is even bigger. But the Switch 2 and the Steam Deck require a bag of some sort if you expect to take them out and about with you. People have different hand sizes, so comfort is very dependent on where your own hands fall in the size spectrum. The Steam Deck tends to be a little harder for people with smaller hands to get comfortable with, but a lot of people are like me and find it extremely well designed for comfort. And I would consider my hands fairly average for a guy. The grips on it just work for me. The Switch 2 has a flat back, just like the original Switch, which has often led to hand cramps for me. I know grip accessories have been pretty popular for the Switch, and I expect the same to be true for the Switch 2. If you've ever played a Switch without a grip accessory for hours, you'll know where you fall here. For my hands, flat leads to pain. While you probably won't notice a major impact on portability with the slimmer design of the Switch 2 since they're both so wide, you'll definitely want to keep the size of your hands in mind to ensure you don't end up with physical pain. Unless you just want to play docked all the time. Then you can take your pick of controllers and forget about this entirely. Whenever I'm considering spending a significant amount of money, I try to identify the known unknowns. Maybe after a while has passed, my purchase will look like a poor choice in hindsight. I can't live in the future, but what I can do is go in with an awareness of the broader context, so I can feel good about my purchase even when time proves it was not perfectly optimal. The biggest factors here are that the Switch 2 isn't even out yet, and we have no idea when or if a second generation Steam Deck will come out. We also can't be certain what new JRPGs will be released for them. As unlikely as I think it is, it's possible that the Switch 2 won't see many at all. Game release plans change constantly, so even if something has been announced, keep in mind that all those plans could disappear at any time. Don't buy based on promises and hope. If you're looking to buy either a Switch 2 or a Steam Deck now, I think you have an incredible library of games to choose from. Just be aware that there are unknowns and accept that. I'd hate for anyone to lose that sense of joy from picking up a new game system just because there will eventually be something better. There will always be something better. We've covered a lot here, and rightly so. It's not an easy decision. Both are exciting propositions. Let's pull it all together so we can actually make a decision. Here's how I would prioritize things, from most important to least important. Feel free to shift these around to suit your preferences. Number 1, ease of use versus flexibility. If you don't care about flexibility at all, that would put you pretty far toward the ease of use end of the spectrum. You don't want to deal with technical issues. You want it to just work. A handheld PC like the Steam Deck is probably not a good option for you. If you care a lot about flexibility and are okay with a little tinkering occasionally, the Steam Deck is a great option. Number 2, game library. The Switch 2 has access to the original Switch's massive catalog of JRPGs through backward compatibility, and has at least one Switch 2 exclusive JRPG remaster announced. Some games in the Switch catalog are not available at all on Steam Deck, like Unicorn Overlord. The Steam Deck has access to a very strong catalog of JRPGs, including some not available on Switch, like Chrono Trigger. Number 3, performance. The Switch 2 is set to offer a true generational leap from the Switch, and will likely outperform the Steam Deck as a general trend. Many of the most graphically demanding games released on it will probably play at least reasonably well on it for some time to come. The Steam Deck is several years old now, and is struggling to keep up with the most graphically demanding games coming out these days. For less demanding games, it offers strong battery life, allowing you to play for several hours at a time before charging. Number 4, pricing. The cost of the hardware is pretty similar. First-party Switch 2 accessories are definitely going to be on the more expensive side, but there will likely be cheaper third-party options in the future, much like what you can use with a Steam Deck. So neither one is necessarily cheaper than the other. Game pricing depends on your personal stance regarding the issue of physical versus digital. If you're happy enough without physical, Steam Deck could be the safer pick. If you frequently buy physical games, the Switch 2 might be the way to go. Either way, there are great deals to be found. Number 5. Comfort. I put this so low on the list only because I am quite happy to play on a TV much of the time, which means I can choose whatever controller feels best to me. The Switch 2 retains the flat design of the original Switch, and many people will probably opt to purchase a separate grip to make it more comfortable for them. The Steam Deck has grips that many find comfortable, but people with smaller hands might disagree. These grips also make it take up more space. Number 6. Backward compatibility and longevity of purchases. The Switch 2 is backward compatible with most of the Switch's library, and it looks like Nintendo Switch Online will continue to offer retro systems and games as part of the subscription, with the addition of GameCube. The Steam Deck has access to PC games dating back decades. For as long as Steam exists, you can buy a game once and return to it as often as you like across different hardware generations. That purchase stays tied to your account wherever it goes. If you frequently find yourself purchasing re-releases of games you've already purchased, this could factor into the pricing considerations. Naturally, this is a long-term consideration, so we can't expect to see the effects of it immediately. Number 7. Battery life. You might be surprised that I've barely talked about battery life at all, and there's a simple reason for that. I don't think we'll see a big difference between the two. The advertised battery life for the Switch 2 is 2 to 6.5 hours. The LCD Steam Deck is roughly 1.5 to 7 hours, I'd say. These are pretty similar numbers. With the Switch 2 being as hot of a commodity as it is right now, a lot of people who want one are probably having a hard time actually snagging a pre-order. That alone could make the Steam Deck a good choice, especially if you're looking for a quick solution that you aren't necessarily planning on sticking with for many years to come. In that case, the cheapest Steam Deck you can find could be a great solution. But that only applies if you're okay with having a less locked down system that's a little less stable. The Steam Deck is a PC. I can almost guarantee that you're going to encounter the occasional odd issue. While most aren't serious or hard to fix in my experience, if that's too far outside of your comfort zone, I think you have your answer. Now, having said all of this, I have just one more thing left to say, and it's no less important. If you already have something that's working for you, that's letting you play many of the JRPGs you're interested in, you might already have enough, even if it's not the latest and greatest. Maybe it's okay to wait and see how things shake out. The Switch 2 is only going to get more games, and if the Steam Deck 2 does happen sometime soon, you'll have another option to consider. Even then, you always have the option of saying, I have enough. As for me, I already have a Steam Deck and a Switch that I absolutely adore. And I want a Switch too. It looks fantastic. But, and this is a massive but, I live in Japan, and English is my native language. So that means I'd be going for the international version of the Switch 2 so I have the option of playing in English. Unfortunately, I don't have 70,000 yen lying around. For the time being, I fall squarely in the camp of, I have enough. I hope this helped. This type of topic is pretty new for me. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you interested in getting a Switch 2 or a Steam Deck? For everyone who stuck around to the end, I want to say a special thank you. It's actually been just over a year since I started YouTube, and my very first video was about JRPGs on the Steam Deck. So I guess it makes sense that I'd circle back around in a fashion. I'm not the most vocal person when it comes to stuff like this, but I did want to take a moment here to share how appreciative I am of everyone who's checked out my videos and engaged in whatever way they're comfortable. It's been a wonderful ride, and I can't wait to keep making more videos. Alright, that's enough out of me. Go find some fun. Peace.